every movie has random trivia. And here at Trivial Theater, I explore some of these movies and the random circumstances that make them the weird creations that we love. I'm really of two minds about this week's movie. My brain is literally split on whether this is a horror movie or a really dark comedy. Either way, this is 1982's Basketcase. We start with a dude that has a lot of wood. I mean, damn, that's pretty impressive. That leads to the lights going out and some strange noises coming from the other room. That probably either means something super sexy or super scary. Either way, this guy must have needed a hand. We move to 80s New York City where we meet Dwayne and his basket, who's met with a list of temptations.
Got joints and bags, nickels and dime bags, gold Columbia smoke. I got acid blotters, rainbows, window pane, speed downs, second off, Valium, mescaline, T-Red, angel dust, check it out, man. Tranquilizing, enemies, librium, poison, tie sticks, methadone, Adderall, red, junk, morphine. What do you want, some?
That doesn't tickle his fancy. He arrives at the famous Hotel Broslin, where he meets the most grizzled desk clerk looking guy I've ever seen. And we find out that checkout is at noon, not 12:15. Shit. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. We meet a typically nosy neighbor who doubles as a tour guide for room 7.
Oh, you're so lucky. That's the best room in the place.
And we find out that she's not lying. Room 7 is a pretty classy place. Dwayne talks to his basket and then feeds his basket. Funny, I never would have pictured a basket as a carnivore. But this burger feeding frenzy definitely proves me wrong. Fellow resident Casey gives us a rundown of New York experiences that you shouldn't miss.
Cockroaches as big as dogs, saxophones playing at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that crazy broad across the hall. Winos pissing on my doorstep.
Later, Dwayne makes his way to Dr. Needleman's office, where this lady eerily describes my experience with Garbage Pail Kids.
First I got dizzy, then I couldn't breathe. Then my throat felt like it was on fire.
Dwayne strips down to show off the reason for his visit, and holy shit! Wow, that's a hell of a scar. The story behind that thing must be a fucking banger. Afterwards, the doctor is left alone, and I gotta say, seeing how he does with plants, I kinda question his ability with patience. Our first guess at what's in the basket happens when it's stolen during a movie, and well, that guy is gonna need some stitches. Dwayne returns to Needleman's office, and we get our first glance at the basket creature's fabulous nails. The doc has a sudden urge to organize his space Marie Kondo style, and that's followed up by the genuinely terrifying reveal of Belial. I'm thinking the doc is gonna need more than stitches to fix him up. The next morning, Belial gets wieners on the TV. No, wait a minute, that's not right. Wieners and a TV. But the TV doesn't work, and he reacts the same way as I do to cheap quality. His tantrum wakes up the neighbors, and we find out that the desk clerk never changes his clothes. The room appears empty, but hey buddy, you may not want to open that. Can't say I didn't warn you. The clerk gets called in again, and I really hope he's getting paid overtime for this. Sad to say, but stitches aren't gonna do this guy any good. Elsewhere, Dwayne and Sharon go on a date, and she observes,
But you're different.
He reacts violently to Belial's outburst and races back to the hotel where the cops have come to investigate. Dwayne finds his room has had a makeover, courtesy of Belial, who has also pulled off an amazing disappearance. He eventually shows up in a toilet. Dwayne gives him hell.
Are you crazy? You could have had us arrested!
But honestly, dude shoved himself in a toilet. Give him just a little slack. Later, we get a Budweiser product placement that leads to a drunken laugh. And the realization that Dwayne shouldn't drink, cause that boy shares everything in flashback mode.
Our mother died giving birth to us. He was attached to my right side.
He was born a Siamese twin, and damn if he didn't go through a ton of shirts. His dad insists on separating Dwayne and Belial, which leads to a clearly legal surgery with some banger sound effects. In retribution for separating them, the pair make sure that their dad falls to pieces after he comes too close to a giant saw. Belial attempts an ill-advised sexual advance, and Casey has the right response. The hardest working desk clerk in the hotel biz shows up again and delivers the best line of the movie.
This isn't a hotel, it's a house!
The next day, Dwayne confronts the other doc that separated him and Belial, which starts with a threat,
Unless you've grown something else you want to cut off.
jumps to a basket-based surprise, and ends with a face full of sharp pointy things. I'm really thinking Stitches isn't going to do anything to help her either. Sharon and Dwayne get it on, but Belial isn't having any of it, making his objections clearly heard. Jealousy leads to Belial killing Sharon. After Dwayne discovers the rather unsettling scene, the hotel guests and the desk clerk bust in to see Belial holding Dwayne by his nuts. The fight sends both of them out a window, Dwayne choked by Belial, who is holding onto a fire escape. Another crowd responds to the noise, and they fall, dying as they lived with each other. So Basketcase was the first feature film by director Frank Hennenlotter, who went on to do Brain Damage, which I reviewed on the channel, and Frankenhooker. His philosophy toward the movie's tone was to make it funny if it couldn't be scary, and if it couldn't be funny, he wanted to make it entertaining for the shock value. It was called the sickest movie ever made by well-known critic Rick Reed, and the quote ended up being on the movie poster. The film's $16,000 budget was said to be the wad of cash that appears early on in the movie, and the crew was so small that most of the names in the credits were made up so the same ones didn't repeat over and over. A great deal of the film was shot without permits, including a sequence of Dwayne running naked through the city and the Statue of Liberty scene. Because of the budget, the crew dumpster dived for furniture and props that could be used on set, and they used whatever locations they could get their hands on, including turning a propped open service elevator into a lobby of the Hotel Broslin. I love Brain Damage, where both Dwayne and the Basket made a cameo. And although my feelings on Basketcase aren't quite as strong, I still gotta say it sits pretty high. For a film made with such a low budget, it manages to do some really amazing things. The stop motion on Belial tearing apart the hotel room alone is pretty impressive. You do get what feels like a proper horror reveal in Belial, and if you don't know it's coming, his full body reveal is downright unsettling. The gore effects are well done, and from Belial's eating to the surgery, the sound design is pretty on point too. Even the story itself should be credited. Although it's a pretty straightforward revenge tale, it is told in a really interesting way. And whether it was intentional or just something I saw in it, Dwayne and Belial's relationship played with the struggle to balance the civilized versus savage aspects of the mind. In the end, they stopped working together, and a lack of balance killed both. I have to add that I kinda love the very straightforward question everyone asks.
What's in the basket?
What's in the basket?
What's in the basket?
What's in the basket?
My brother.
I highly recommend Basketcase, with the caveat that this movie goes in hardcore for shock value, and there are some things that definitely aren't for everyone. Special thanks to Dwayne Miller from Cinemania World for the recommendation. We actually discussed this movie during his podcast a while back, and it turned into something that I really wanted to review here. You'll find his podcast links in the description below. So what do you think? Suggestions for movies, trivial questions, comments, ratings, and a lead on a really nice wicker basket of my own would be appreciated. Thank you so very much for watching.